Hello, everyone. This is Peter Richardson. I'm coming to you from the secret remote location, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what I have in mind for my Ollie class this fall. What I'd like to do is focus on Los Angeles in the year 1939. It was an extraordinary time in the city's history. As many of you might know, that year was something of a high water mark in American film history. Despite the depths of the Great Depression, the Hollywood studio system was thriving, and the films those studios produced that year included Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, Stagecoach with a young actor named John Wayne, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with Jimmy Stewart, Goodbye Mr. Chips, Love Affair, Gunga Din, Wuthering Heights, Ninotchka, Of Mice and Men, and many other films. So I want to talk a little bit about Hollywood's history and make sure we understand why the studios were doing so well in the late 1930s. I also want to talk about what was happening on the literary scene in Los Angeles that same year. Its vitality was closely related to Hollywood's success because many accomplished writers, including F. Scott Fitzgerald and William Faulkner, had moved to Los Angeles to write screenplays, effectively using Hollywood as a kind of ATM machine while they continued to work on their fiction. But in 1939 alone, we got books like Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep, Nathaniel West's The Day of the Locust, John Fonte's Ask the Dust, and Aldous Huxley's After Many a Summer Dies the Swan. The Grapes of Wrath also came out that year, and though we don't usually think of it as a Los Angeles novel, John Steinbeck was spending a lot of time in Los Angeles while Of Mice and Men was being shot. Also during this time, many German writers found refuge in Los Angeles, creating what one scholar called Weimar on the Pacific. And some wrote fiction and poetry, while others, like Bertolt Brecht, tried to break into the movie business. And there's one fascinating story of Arnold Schoenberg, the Austrian composer, being asked to produce a score for The Good Earth, which actually came out in 1937. It's a pretty amusing and illustrative story, but I'll save it for the class. I also want to talk about Los Angeles in 1939 under two other aspects: politics and organized crime. That year, of course, the Second World War began in earnest, and many in Los Angeles, including British and German expatriates, had watched the rise of fascism in horror. There had been a fair amount of pro-fascist activity in Southern California as well, some of it sponsored by Nazi Germany and resisted stoutly by those in the labor union movement and in the film community. But the big story in local politics actually was corruption, which got so bad at one point that police officers bombed the cars and homes of grand jury members who had been impaneled to probe the official corruption. The unofficial corruption was widespread as well, and this is where the mob enters the story. During the 1930s, the Chicago outfit infiltrated a major Hollywood labor union and clashed with a more militant union. And as these Chicago mobsters pursued their labor racketeering schemes, they also extorted the studio heads directly. Nevertheless, the studio moguls actually preferred working with gangsters as opposed to militant labor leaders, and the shakedowns didn't prevent these studios from producing many classic films during this time. Sometimes the distinction between the licit and illicit activity was less obvious. So one interesting case is the Music Corporation of America, or MCA, which was founded in Chicago and moved to Beverly Hills in 1939. MCA's founder, Jewel Stein, represented musicians and booked acts during Prohibition when mobsters owned the nightclubs in and around Chicago. After MCA moved to Beverly Hills, its agents began representing movie stars, but stayed on good terms with figures like Sidney Korshak, the lawyer whose clients included the Chicago mob and whose brother was a prominent Chicago politician. Lou Wasserman, who represented Ronald Reagan and later ran MCA Universal, described Korshak as his best friend of 50 years. Perhaps you see where all this is going. What I'd like to do is develop some sense of how these four areas, film, literature, politics, and organized crime, commingled and then burned brightly in Los Angeles just as the world was slipping into the bloodiest war in the history of the planet. So we'll be focusing on the figures and works that best capture this incandescent mix of talent, fast money, corruption, and vice. I hope you'll join us as we look at this fascinating chapter of Los Angeles and American history.